So should Bharat expect more of these incursions and more of these issues with China on the LAC? Or maybe they'll shift the theater to the Indian Ocean region. Do you expect in the coming weeks and months China to cause more problems for us?
Indeed, as of now, the Chinese have mobilized some 70,000 troops in the Ladakh area, and also heavy mobilization on the north of Arunachal Pradesh, in Ningchi Prefecture, Loka Prefecture, Shigatse Prefecture. So there is heavy mobilization, and of course we are very prepared, very well prepared in the eastern sector and in Sikkim. There are issues in the middle sector and the western sector that we need to bridge in the coming days and weeks. So there is the problem. But I would also say that in the last 2 to 3 years, there were nearly 50 to 60 surveillance missions in the Indian Ocean region. And the Yuan Wang 5 incident in Hambantota last November indicated their focus is also on Indian Ocean region. So both continental and maritime are under stress. And since we have not budged anywhere, this resulted in the Chinese upping the ante. For the Chinese, for example, in the hilly areas, the Chinese had 68 casualties, while India had none in the mobilization process. Their Western Theater Command former commander passed away. They said due to some illness, but actually due to the high altitude sickness. But because we have Siachen Glacier preparation since 1986, high altitude training and others, so we were not able to succumb to the high altitude region. And so China also has a problem here in terms of the border mobilization. They're not really prepared for the high altitude warfare or mobilization. Also in the Indian Ocean region, they do not have bases or airfields for tactical air support, logistic support. So there are actually problems for China in the Indian Ocean as well as in the high altitude regions of Himalayas. So this we have gained a lot of experience in. For example, the Indian Navy is quite modernized and has several plans. We have to see the Indian Navy's response whenever a Galwan happens, a Doklam happens, or a Yangtze in Taiwan happens. And today we also have Andaman Nicobar refurbishment with 5,000 crores on the infrastructure, maritime infrastructure and others. So this indicates we are actually prepared well in both fronts, land as well as in the maritime domain.
That's quite reassuring, sir. But then China is not going to give up things so easily, and they're not going to make things easy for us, I'm sure. As we see in our immediate neighborhood, Nepal, for instance, I think Sher Bahadur Deoba had won the election. He had the majority. And all the communist parties got lesser seats than what they had previously. And it was a given that Prachanda and Sher Bahadur Deoba would form the government. But then Chinese have done something where the arch rivals Oli and Prachanda came together. They're going to rotate the premiership, and they've now taken over the country. I don't think it's sounding good for us, at least with Chinese influence. And I don't know, I mean, you should be able to warn us, what are we going to face in, let's say, a couple of decades from now? Is it that their BRI road from, cutting across the Himalayas going to suddenly take over Nepal in the next couple of decades? I mean, the palm and five fingers principle of Mao Zedong, we know it. So Nepal is definitely in the radar. So I think one more peaceful front we seem to be losing, and we're going to have a headache in Nepal as well. Is that so, sir?
Indeed, there is a lot of Chinese influence in Nepal. No denying of that fact. the Chinese ambassador, a new ambassador has come now to Kathmandu. So the Chinese embassy's influence has increased substantially in Kathmandu politics. And this is reflected in the Belt and Road Initiative, telecom sector, leather industries, road construction, and other fields, hydroelectricity projects, and other fields. So there is a lot of Chinese influence currently in Nepal. However, the Chinese plan to have complete control has been rejected by the Nepalese. And they initially had 2+2+1 arrangement, that is Prachanda for 2 years, Oli for 2 years, and the Congress, Nepalese Congress for a year, Oli for 1 year, and Deuba for 2 years, like this 2+2+1 program. But that has been finally jettisoned, and now it is 3+2, where the Prachanda and Oli will rule the roost in Kathmandu for the next 5 years, assuming that is going to be a stable government. So there is a problem here because China is pumping in a lot of money into the politics. There are rumors about like what happened in Sri Lanka, where they have bribed a number of politicians. So there is also this in the name of contracts, in the name of new infrastructure projects and others. For example, Nepalese Senate Standing Committee came out with a report that a former deputy prime minister's wife received a lot of money from China. So there is huge influence of money power coming from China, and they have nearly 19 border trade posts which were constructed, but after the earthquake, many of these were damaged. And Totapani and Kirung were one of the main areas of the trade exchanges. This has actually stopped because of the COVID-related border controls, which now are being lifted between China and Nepal. So we may possibly see a stepped up Chinese influence in this. And we have to also see the Nepalese discontent on the 13 places where the border markers have been removed, and China building the well-off society villages in Humla district, in other places. So there is a lot of Nepalese discontent. So just to summarize, the Belt and Road Initiative projects in Nepal have actually not taken off. Many of these came under controversy and public because the initial Chinese argument that there should be harmonization, policy harmonization, has been rejected by the Nepalese political parties. Harmonization basically means that Nepal has to agree to every other political diktat of China. So what has happened is the Nepalese political leaders, because of the pressures from below, they finally could not pass through this harmonization clause, and they rejected actually on the Belt and Road Initiative, and no project, and Nepal is insisting that they should only get a grant rather than a loan or aid, because these are, they also know Hambantota incident and the meltdown in Sri Lanka. So they are very cautious in taking any loan from China. So this has resulted in a oversight by the Nepalese bureaucracy, Nepalese political leaders, and there is actually a stalemate in Nepal today on the Chinese influx of these Belt and Road Initiative projects. No BRI project has been completed so far. Of course, they have the Buddh Gandak project, but that has also not been completed. There are several controversies, demonstrations, and others. And so there is 5G, Huawei 5G telecom sector, which is quite dangerous because they control much of the telecom sector in Nepal. And this should be a major concern for India because of the sensitiveness of this telecom security issue in the Trans-Himalayan region. And the MCC of the United States brought in a new element, which is that it has given a grant of $500 million, grant, not aid or loan. So as a result, there was a certain competitiveness between US and Nepal, while India has been playing a relatively safer position and cautious position recently, and let the Nepalese know that we have actually done a lot of work in the infrastructure projects, in also insisting that the hydroelectricity that we buy from Nepal should be from Indian companies which have generated that, not the Chinese companies. So there is a dilemma now for the Nepalese. If a Chinese company manufactures, or rather produces electricity, India is not going to buy because of this clause. So that suggests the Nepalese are becoming very cautious not to brush aside India in this process. So very many constraints for China in the recent times in Nepal, but I must say their penetration levels are pretty intensive in the Nepalese politics. I mean, there are so many news in the local press in Nepal about how the Chinese embassy is quite close to many leaders. And one Nepalese told me that a former prime minister took 300 crores from China. I don't want to name him, but that is the level of corruption prevalent in Nepal.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite scary. I mean, but I think they have also claimed Pokhara airport or something in BRI, and the Nepalese were not happy. That was not part of BRI, but I think somebody in Beijing announced it and they were not happy, I heard. Share this video, like, subscribe, and comment, and then encourage a nationalistic channel like Nationalist Hub.